I'll start. Dallas, thank you for coming along today. Um, you, or if you like, your bio is very much you're the holistic coach, a former corporate leader who guides high achievers to dismantle the not good enough narrative and reconnect with the authentic, for us to reconnect with our authentic selves. You create a non-prescriptive, judgmental-free space for clients to transform unprocessed pain into life of deep alignment and inner peace. As an American living in Denmark, you originally took a job out shortly after university to work with Maersk in Denmark, staying for 14 years, and then an additional 4 years with Ingersoll Rand. You're married to a French lady, and you've already started a family. You then moved back to New Jersey. Um, However, things didn't work out as well moving back to the US, and therefore you moved back to Denmark. So, Dallas, welcome for coming along today. The first question I have is tell me about your time moving back to the US. As you mentioned before, you had problems with the houses you lived in. You also had problems and issues with your son and how he was treated at school. Can you give us an understanding of why it didn't work? Um, was the culture or expectation different, or were there specific things that happened?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. And I think a little bit of both, to be honest with the question. I think, to build more context, when I was living in Denmark, worked for a great company. Maersk was an amazing company, took me all across the world. I stayed in five-star hotels, ate at the best restaurant in the world, right? Really got to live an amazing life. But something about it just didn't feel enough. I felt like I wasn't climbing the ladder fast enough. I felt just didn't have meaning and fulfillment that I really wanted. So I really thought Denmark was holding me back. I thought if I moved to the US, then, I could really reignite my career and really find that passion, that fulfillment, and that meaning that I was searching for. So my wife and I took a job with Maersk in New Jersey. I'm from North Carolina, so New Jersey is still far away from my family. My wife had never lived in the US. We moved with a 2-year-old, and she was pregnant with our daughter. And we quickly realized that life was just too expensive for us in New Jersey. So we wanted to be closer to family and just have a kind of a cheaper cost of living. So I decided to leave Maersk, take a job with Ingersoll Rand in North Carolina. Once we got to North Carolina, things improved financially. My wife, ended up going back to work, but she was commuting nearly an hour each way, so nearly 2 hours in the car. So that was stretching her a little bit thin to be able to see the kids. Plus, she was missing working in an international environment, so she took a job with a big American company that also had a very international presence. She got a massive promotion. Her and I were making the most money we had ever made in our careers at that point. But it was the
Great.
stretching us thin. She was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. She felt like she never had time to see the kids. She felt like she was in jail, for the lack of a better way to put it. Even though she was compensated very well, she just didn't feel like her time was hers. And it was just causing a big strain on us and our family.
Makes
Um,
sense.
so she had the grand plan to, you know, quit the job, spend 2 weeks just sort of recalibrating herself, and then she was going to take the kids and go to Europe for a couple of weeks. And this was in 2020. So this was on a Thursday when she had her last day at work, and then Monday, let's say life shut down with COVID. So that just put a little damper on that plan. But fast forward to 2022, my son was having problems at school, and we were getting daily calls from our school, basically saying your son is a threat to himself and others, that he was running away from school. He was having issues at home where he was saying he, hated himself and he was the worst, and just had these big explosions. So we started seeing a therapist. We had him tested for autism and all these different things, which none of that came back. But 2023, his class had gone from 18 kids to 8. And just again, the calls were getting, it was just getting more and more, and it was getting worse and worse. And, we were just like, what's going on? So we had the idea to call a few of the other parents that had taken their kids out of school as well. And we found out that, they were having a lot of the same issues that my son were having. Their kids were in therapy. They were saying they hated themselves. And they were also mentioning that it was a result of the teacher. So we found out that this teacher was mentally and physically abusing these kids. So
Yeah.
naturally, we pulled my son out of that school. And about the same time, I get a file from work that's showing I'm 20% underpaid, according to my band. I bring it to my boss and to HR, and they tell me that they're not going to do anything about it, and that between that and everything that was happening at that time, I was just like, okay, this is just enough. I couldn't take it anymore. I had a full-blown panic attack. And one
Time
night
to
I
try
was,
something new.
yeah, one night I was sitting alone by myself, just watching TV on the third story of my house. And I just, clear as clear as it could be and as peaceful as it could be, I heard a voice that said, Dallas, you need to quit your job and move back to Denmark. Um, and that was July 31st of 2023. October 2023, my family moved. I stayed behind to, sell our house and just to say my goodbyes to the family and all that. And then December of 2023, I moved back to Denmark.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been on a similar journey to myself and David as far as timeline is concerned.
Hmm.
We just got there through different paths.
Mm.
Because myself and David, we've more or less been coaching for, full time now for the last 2 years. Um, it's interesting how, the journeys, the paths that we all have to take to get to where we are today. And speaking with lots of other people, there's been a defining moment, whether or not it's a death, a divorce, or health, or in your case with your son and yourself, there's a almost a switch that gets flicked on
Mm.
to change what you're doing and find a new direction. And that, for many people, is often, a direction to move into to coaching to fix ourselves, or find a way of fixing ourselves with somebody help from other people or yourself,
Mm.
and then to actually want to serve and help other people as a result of that. So for that, I thank you. When our kids have issues, it sort of makes sense, or makes us assess ourselves as well,
Mm.
and the shame that we carry from our parents, or on the older generations, that can actually really haunt us. What did you do about this? Was it heal thyself before you could heal your son?
Mm.
How did you manage it? How did you cope with it?
It's a great question, and I get chills in my body just thinking about it because I honestly didn't know, Howard, to be honest with you. All I knew was I had to change the environment and try something different. Um, my journey then started as like also a big part of my journey was physically I wasn't feeling well. My appendix ruptured and I almost died. I had my gallbladder removed. I had chronic stomach and gut issues where I had just crippling pain for nearly a decade. I had brain fog, I get constant headaches, low energy. I'm just like, all right, is this really what life is going to be for the rest of my life? So I'm going to answer your question, but there's a bit of buildup to that where
But your nervous system was
Oh, go ahead.
shot, basically.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I was
Yeah.
like, I've got to figure out how to get myself healthy. My son was like, okay, we're putting him in a different environment and just sort of hoping for the best. But I was like, for me, I at least got to figure out how I get myself healthy. And as silly as it sounds, I started listening to Andrew Huberman, all his podcasts of, like getting sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning. Delaying your coffee intake by 60 minutes after you wake up, drinking
Makes
electrolytes
sense.
before you drink coffee, right? All these just small little habits I started implementing. I started going to the gym. I cleaned up my diet. I removed, all processed food from my diet. Started lifting weights for the first time in my life. And, the compound effect on that started to just really clear up a lot of mental space. I was sleeping better. I was feeling better. The headaches started to go away. My son was actually doing really well at school. He was learning, he was in a completely new environment. He was having to learn Danish, but they were just very accommodating of him. And the Danish system is very much about well-being before education, right? It's like if the child feels well, then they will learn. So he was going along, doing really well. I was really like just starting to feel a lot better. And then in 2024, I went through what I call life-changing therapy. It was a mix of what I call somatic, IFS, and Western Buddhism, really like loving yourself into healing. But it was the first time I learned about trauma from emotionally immature and narcissistic parents. I had great parents, I had loving parents. I grew up in a 4,000 square foot house. I had tons of friends. We were upper middle class wealthy. Like everybody knew our family. I had tons of friends. I was a really good football, soccer player, right? So I had everything going for me, but there's still this shame, this not good enough story that prevailed because, I just had this mom who was an amazing mother who loved me, but at the same time, because of her own pain that she wasn't aware of, then she was passing that on to me. And at least that's the way I was interpreting it. So once I learned about that, that's when like my whole world blew apart. And that's when I started to, learn about spirituality, not in the sense of religion, but in terms of becoming more present, right? That I was stuck in the past, I was stuck in the future, so I was never in the present moment.
Well,
Once I
Dallas,
start,
can you flip that?
yeah.
And how did your family interpret that? If that makes
Mm,
sense? Because you found something inside yourself. Let's put
yeah.
it that way. Um, and it probably built better bonds with your kids and your wife,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was going through this, right, like one of the big things that was sort of this aha moment was like everything that happened to my son had to happen. As heartbreaking as it was, and as twisted as it sounds to say it out loud, that my son had to be abused for me to wake up, right? That I get emotional saying it because it's
Right.
it's still real and raw. And it's like, how did something that traumatic and that bad had to happen for me to wake up? But once I did, then yes, absolutely to your point, David, then right, the knock-on effect like it was insurmountable. My son was already feeling better at school, but just the relationship him and I have now, my wife, my daughter, like it's changed so much because I think we carry, right or wrong, we carry this view of masculinity that we need to be the provider, and we put
Sure.
that into economic terms. And I was the provider, but it never felt good enough. But once became the provider of safety and trust and just presence, right? Like that changed everything in
Yeah,
my household.
yeah, yeah. No, I can absolutely understand. I mean, as you said, most coaches have had a previous career climbing the corporate ladder, as you said, enjoying those five-star restaurants, traveling the world. What made you then decide to serve as a coach? Was it a natural evolution after working on yourself, having the calling to serve, or was it something else that drove you?
It's a really good question. I think it's a mix of all, to be honest with you. And I'll tell you kind of how it came about. So as I'm in this phase working on myself, I was randomly scrolling Instagram one day and I saw something that said, solve your problems and sell the solution. That's how you turn purpose into profits. And like something about it it just resonated in a way of like that makes a lot of sense, right? Like something about it just clicked. So the guy was Dan Coe is his name. I subscribed to his newsletter. I started getting really curious about what he was selling. I fell through his funnel. I bought his course. Then it talks about building a personal brand. So I start writing online. And really, I was like, okay, well, what problems have I solved in my life? And at that point, I had lost. 40 pounds, nearly 20 kilos. And I'd done it all without Wegovy or Ozempic, right? I'd done it all naturally and holistically. So like, that, right, that I've solved that problem. So let me see if people are interested in that. So I really thought I was going to help busy 9 to 5 parents lose weight and get in shape. But as I tried to sell that, nobody was buying it. Um, but I think what I realized too is there was so much more work that I needed to do on myself as well. So as I continue to go through that therapy that I talked about and really unlock my emotional and my spiritual side of just getting more in touch with it, um, it brought me back to 2018 when I was still in the US and I went to see a career coach. And you hear the advice like follow your passion, you'll never work again, you'll never work a day again in your life. Well, at that time, my passion was sports and drinking. So I was like, how can I get paid to watch sports and drink beer? So I went to this career coach thinking he was going to help me like tap into the sports industry in some way. And after a couple of sessions, he looked at me dead in the eye and he's like, Dallas, I've got something to tell you. I'm like, what? He's like, your passion's not sports. Your passion is people. I'm like, okay, interesting. Like, I hear what you
Smart
say.
woman.
It didn't really resonate, but I was like, okay, maybe there's something in that because I do like people. I generally do. And I think people have generally always been attracted to me and open up to me in some ways. It's like, okay, right. But as our sessions went along, I was still thinking sports was it, and then I was thinking like something in service. So like we were looking at, charity work or something where I could explore that people side of things. And I ended up getting a promotion at the job I was at. So I was like, all right, I've got promoted. You've sort of helped me. We've come to the end of our rope. And the last thing he said to me was like, Dallas, I really think with your passion for people, your career path is to become a life coach. And I laughed at him. I was like, a life coach? Like, come on. Well, what is a life coach? Right? I was like, this just wasn't for me. So in one ear and out the other. So all that to say is once I started really working on myself, going deeper, really sitting with and exploring all the things that were coming up in my life and just reflecting on it, I was just drawn back to his words and I was like, sorry, my language, fuck, he was right. He was absolutely right. I do love people.
Yeah.
As I was putting myself out there more and more and talking to people, I was like, I generally light up when I'm around people and just listening and holding space and talking to them. And the more I was trying to sell this idea of helping people lose weight, people were more interested in the mental side of things and the really like how do you, get out of your head? How do you cure the anxiety? How do you cure your depression? All that. So the more I started talking to people and holding space for them, the more I realized that this is a thing people were interested in. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is it. Maybe I am a life coach.
Yeah. And I know, because we were talking earlier in the week. I know that you've had your best month ever in January. Um, what does a full practice look like for you moving forward?
In terms of number of clients,
Number of clients.
hmm,
Yeah, let's keep it at number of clients.
yeah, I think for me it's around that 10 mark. What I've said is just to protect my energy and my way of being. I know I have certain habits and just different things that I've implemented in my day that keep me at my best. Because what I've seen is that the more I am me, the more that enables you to be you. And I think
Makes
if I
total
could do
sense. Yeah.
anything as a coach, that is it, right? Like I'm unattached to you, right? Like I have a gift of really good vision, not only just being able to see 2020 vision, but to see deeper into somebody. And the more I'm in touch with myself, the more it allows me to see the person in front of me. Um, so what I've said for that is if I could do 2 sessions a day, then the math adds up to 10. So that's where I feel like my practice would be full to allow me to keep working on being the best version of me that I can.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it.
Makes sense.
And I mean, obviously, culturally, an American and Europeans look at things very differently. And I know that very much that in America, Americans are far more amenable and almost expect and want coaching and to pay for it. Whereas in Europe, it's a harder, and I'll use the word, it's a harder sell. And I don't think you can sell coaching, but it's harder. People don't realize the benefits of coaching in Europe as much as they do in the US. Um, it's very much from the point of view that coaching can enable themselves to grow. Um, what's your thinking on this? I mean, from a cultural perspective, Americans versus Europeans. Um, because I'm very much, trying to understand how we can change that European stance on accepting or not accepting coaching. Whereas in America, everyone almost expects that they are going to need a coach for this and for that, and
Hmm.
they're far more willing to pay for it.
Yeah, I like that, Howard. Yeah,
Hmm.
good
Yeah,
question.
I don't know that I've been able to put my finger on it necessarily, but I really it comes down to readiness or it comes down to pain, right? And what is your pain threshold? And a lot of it is the balance of pain. Are we most of us forego the pain that we're currently experiencing to push it off to something, we think to change that we've got to go through a level of pain so we're able to deal with the current pain that we have. And whether Europeans or Americans have different balance in pain, I'm not really sure to be able
Yeah,
to be honest,
Right.
but I think it's within that once somebody is ready, it's because the pain that they've been enduring for so long becomes so great that they can't ignore it. And I think in that sense that Europeans don't have the same pain that Americans have because of the social system that is in place in a lot of European countries, because of the net that's there to be able to, most Americans have to pay for things out of pocket, compared to Europeans in that sense, right? Like I know in Denmark, right? If I go to the doctor, I scan my card. I don't have to worry about an insurance premium or things like that. So it's
yeah.
it's just a different balance in that sense. So
Right.
I think in that sense, it's that pain balance that
So,
maybe
so
drives it.
is it an expectation that, for argument's sake, the state will pick up
Mhm.
in Europe?
Right.
And I know that that's not necessarily the case because I think the state in many countries is letting people down,
Mhm.
and that's why people are driving towards, sorting out their own coaching because the net, or if you like, the gaps in the net have just become a lot wider, and a lot more people are falling through, and therefore, to gain what they're looking for, they're having to pay for it privately.
Yeah,
Whereas,
it's
whereas in America, everybody has to pay for it privately.
true. Yeah, and I think too, even with company sponsored therapy or things like that,
Yeah.
I know my own experience, right? I even having insurance here, having private insurance here in Denmark, I saw a therapist. It was 5 sessions, and we were making great progress. But after 5 sessions, she's like, "I think you're okay, and you're ready to be released back into the wild." And I'm like, "Sorry, no, I'm not. Like, I feel like I've still got a lot to uncover." Right? So there's that it's a cost thing as well because it's therapy, coaching, whatever. It can seem expensive on the surface, so it's hard to justify for a lot of people. And that's where I say that pain comes up because if somebody's
Yeah.
pain is so big, then they're like, $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, 5,000, 10,000, whatever, right? That's really cheap
A
if you
lot.
think
Yeah.
about it in the terms of 20 more years of dealing with your pain.
Yeah.
So it's
Right, right.
Yeah.
it's
And okay, is it fair to say that when you moved back to the US that you had these health issues, you spent time working on these, and as well as your emotional state and spiritual um, environment, social. When did you, or if you like, what did you do to improve all of this? How was it that you, okay, putting it very bluntly, how did you then fix it for yourself?
hmm. I've never been afraid to experiment. My wife told me, she's like, "You're one of the most resilient people I know. And if somebody tells you, here's what you can do to fix your problem," she's like, "you're going to do it and you're going to be consistent with it." And I think like that consistency has been able to drive me to just when I find something that I feel like works, I stick to it. Right. And because I was in such a desperate state, I was willing to try anything, right? Like I felt like I tried everything, but I'd never tried some of the things that I started trying, right? Like I the power of now, for example, right? Well, a very hugely instrumental book in my journey, but it taught me things that I'd never been taught before. It taught me how to
I
be
like that
present.
book. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
taught me how to that really like you can't and one of my favorite quotes from it is you can't be fully present and unhappy at the same time. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, that's radical. And I realized how much I was never present in my own life. I was always looking to the next moment because I didn't think the present moment contained what it needed to. So my persistence, my consistency to stick with things and be willing to experiment, I think was really the key to it all. I didn't follow a 10-step formula. I didn't, hire a coach straight out the gate that gave me, a blueprint or anything. I think a lot of it started with awareness that therapy that I talked about gave me, right? It gave me the why that I felt the way I did about myself. And from there, like, okay, if I knew the why, right, then I
So,
could start to
so it was
focus on the
personal development that you then started looking into. How can I improve this? How can I improve that?
right.
Yeah.
And I like to say, like, health is a big part of who I am and how I show up, and ultimately what I want to help people become healthy in their own ways. But I had such a limited view on it. I thought it was physical and it was mental because that's all you hear about when you hear about health.
Yeah.
But as I started to, like I said, my journey started in the physical realm. It went into the mental because it just cleared up so much space. But then what I realized is it's deeper than that. It's emotional, it's spiritual, it's environmental, and it's social. And it's those six things when they start working in harmony and you start to realize that, hey, to be healthy, I have to heal in all these areas, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of healing that had to happen before I could become healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And in doing all of this, how did it affect your being? And okay, we talk about being. Um, did it prepare you to become the coach you are today?
100%. I think before my being was victimhood, right? Like life was happening to me. It was always everybody else's fault, right? Why could I have all these things and nothing seemed to go right? And right, that was the state that my nervous system knew and that I kept choosing. But as I kept developing myself and I kept reading more and I invested in my own coaching, I was, went through that therapy. I was just a student of myself, right? I just became so curious about me. Um, and the more I did that, the more I realized that the thing I was looking for my entire life wasn't out here, right? I'd searched my entire life. I tried, like I said, I tried everything. But once I pointed
Yeah.
once I started pointing it
I like
inwards,
that comment. Yeah, I like that what do you want to call it, Dallas, the journey.
yeah.
You share your journey on, how you got from, point A to point B, to be your best self and be the better coach for somebody
And
else.
And
And
once I turned that search inward, that's when I realized that my being is it's my state. It's who I choose to be.
yeah.
And I think, like I said, one of the biggest revelations for me was purpose was always a big thing for me. Like I felt like purpose was this thing that God was handing out to people and he forgot about me. Right? Why do all these other people have this great life and feel they're living their passion and their calling and their purpose? And like me, I didn't feel like I had a purpose. But what I realized is I am my purpose. And once I
Yeah.
found me, then what I did was just a reflection of me. And that
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
greatest thing because that's all I ever wanted to be. It was just
Well,
me.
I'm going to give credit to your kids and your wife
Yeah,
because they
100%.
raised you well.
Right?
They got you to where you are today.
Absolutely.
And
Excellent.
if I said to you, what is the one defining thing that has made a difference to you, but you're now also passing on to your clients?
Awareness. I said it once I was going through the therapy. Awareness is my North Star. The more aware I am, I can't address what I'm not aware of. And the more aware I am, not just in this like, oh, this is the way I am and I'm just stuck. No, like what's beneath it all? What's really driving it? This curious, compassionate awareness just allowed me to see things for what they really were. And I think if I can do that with other people, that's why I say, like, my greatest gift, I believe, as a coach, is to help people hold up a mirror and help them see themselves. Because
So
once they can see themselves
Bingo.
clearly and be aware, then they have the choice.
so it's your empathy that you've increased to basically help other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think that empathy and that desire to find me is like, once I found me now, like, how can I not give that back? How can I not help others
Yeah.
find themselves? Because I believe
Right.
that's the greatest gift I can give, is to help somebody find themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. David, do you have any other questions?
I think those are the basics right there. I'm always curious about US expat, if you want to call you.
Mhm.
And why you chose moving to Europe or Denmark, or chose a French wife anyway, at the end of the day.
Yeah, one of my favorite words that I uncovered in my journey was synchronicity. And I think moving to Denmark and meeting my French wife were the greatest
Can
synchronicities
I
that
use that? I like that.
yeah,
You go
absolutely.
ahead.
Right?
Keep
Because
going.
I, like straight out of college, I was looking for a job and took a job with Maersk, not because I was passionate about shipping. I didn't even know who they were, to be honest with you.
Right.
But they were hiring and I needed money. Let's be honest. And after 2.5 years, I was like, okay, this has been okay, but it's not really what I want. But I traveled to Europe for the first time to meet my friend who was doing an MBA abroad, or doing a master's abroad. So
Right.
I went to see him. We did the typical, 20-year-old like traveling Europe. It hit all the hot spots, but like something about it called me back. So when I got back to the US, I was like, there's something about Europe that I just can't shake. So I started looking at ways to, how could I get over there? And at that time, the job that I was doing, they were recruiting to do that job just on a global scale out of Denmark. So I didn't choose Denmark. I'd say it kind of chose me. And once I moved to Denmark and made that move, I met my wife the first weekend I was here, but she had a boyfriend. But there was something about her that I just, again, couldn't put my finger on, another synchronicity. So 3 months later, a friend of mine that introduced us was moving back to the US, had a party. Long story short, she was there, I was there, she was single, and from there we haven't been apart since.
Excellent. Excellent.
Perfect.
Okay, Dallas, I'd really like to thank you for coming today. So thank you, sir. Um,
We'll end it on synchronicity, right? I like that
absolutely.
song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Um,
sounds like the recipe for life coaching.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you guys for having me on. This is a lot of fun. It was great to be able to share my story, and thanks for the great questions.
Yeah, no pleasure.
Dallas, thank you.
I'll once it's edited, I'll send you a copy, and you can post it at your end as well. Typically, what I will do is I'll post it onto Facebook, but I'll also post it into LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
But I'll let you know. I know the week before we're going to post it, just to let you know when it's going out.
Okay. Amazing.
Excellent.
Thank you guys for doing this. Thank you for creating the space for yourselves and others, and for doing what you're doing. I appreciate
Well,
it.
Dallas, excellent conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
an absolute pleasure. And all I can say is, good luck on the journey,
Mm,
and it's now onwards and upwards. So
absolutely.
I hope we have a conversation this time next year, and you can tell me, how successful it's all been, because
Absolutely.
we're all looking for that success.
And what I've learned is it's always there, right? It's just where my focus is.
Yeah,
A friend told me
Right.
once, Dallas, you've always been successful. You've
Agree.
just never been able to admit it.
yeah, yeah. And that's part of being able to receive that.
Mm,
And as Lisa's often saying, you have to learn how to receive it.
yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you guys as well. A wonderful weekend to you both.
Yeah,
David, nice to meet you. And Howard,
Yeah, yeah. Nice to meet you.
we'll see you in our group.
excellent.
All
We'll
right.
catch up soon.
See you guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.
I'll call you.
Okay.